It's my time, so I'm going to speak. First of all, I want to thank all of the witnesses. I think we're actually going to start making progress on securing the border and on a sensible and humane policy. I want to thank folks from the immigrant community and dreamers who I know are here and acknowledge my respect for the contributions you've made to our country. And I don't want to lose the benefit of that. As I've listened to my colleagues, I think it's not that complex. Number one, I think there is agreement we have to have a secure border. You can't have a country that doesn't have a control over its border. Second, I think there's broad consensus that criminals who are here should be deported. Ms. Moran, I just want to acknowledge, as we all have, the incredible life you've had, the loss of your daughter, and your own experience. People who do that, they shouldn't have gotten in, and they shouldn't be here. And if they are here, they should be in jail. Third, we have the question of people whose status has been determined, but it took so long for that status to be determined, in many cases, years and years, that they've become an integral part of their community, and they put roots down here, and they haven't committed a crime. This is where we don't have consensus. There's a view among some, and I think the President-elect Trump has this view, that if you are here illegal.
Hey, how much does my coworker make? You're not allowed to know that. All good. I'll just check the Glassdoor app. The what? Glassdoor has a new...
Then you should go back. Senator Graham was indicating a view that if you've been adjudicated, fair is fair and you should go back. There's another point of view, and that is that if you have been here, and we had a system that didn't adjudicate in any kind of timely way, and you have been working, I'll put it in very specific terms, on a farm in Vermont for 7 or for 8 or for 9 years, and you become a contributing member to the community and the economy. There's another approach one could take where you might pay a fine, you might have to make amends for the fact that you came here illegally, but there'd be an acknowledgement of the contributions you've made, the roots you've established, and what the harm to the community would be. And that certainly would be the case in Vermont. Just speaking about agriculture, I just can't imagine. Actually, I can't imagine. I've talked to some farmers who, if they lost their labor, would lose their farm because cows don't milk themselves, and they are not able to get local labor to do that. So there is a real potential here for us to find common ground and get something done that is securing the border, that is deporting criminals, that is making judgments about allowing people the option of paying a fine, where there would be a deterrent as long as we have a secure border. You know, Ms. Moran, I just want to ask you, you've suffered so much. And I want to express to you my gratitude for your advocacy on behalf of others. But if we had a secure border, you're advocating for that. If we have, and that keeps criminals out, right? Would it be in conflict with what you think would be a reasonable outcome for, like, dreamers, for instance, kids who came here with their parents, who've not committed any crime, who've become parts of the community? Would that be something that you would see as a reasonable outcome to find a way for them to have a legal status?
A couple of things from listening to everyone speak. One, as an American citizen and not a politician, so I don't know all the ins and outs, but just what I'm hearing is the bottom line is profit. To an American citizen, they're hearing you're putting profit above American lives. So that's the message you're communicating. For me personally, our country is made of immigrants. We have 250 years or more of immigrants that have come to this country and have built the country to what it is today. And we are descendants of those immigrants. The issue is having an open border that allows an invasion of people that compromises our national security because our borders, we don't have enough border agents to stem the flow
Right.
of immigrants, but then also they bypass the law to speed up them coming in, and in doing so, they miss all the criminals that are coming into our country. So I think we need to put those laws back into place and to practice so we can catch them at the border. And then I think that we should work towards those that have come to the country. If it's illegal, the very word itself means unlawful. So are we saying it's okay to come to America in an unlawful way? There has to be some kind of a line, a precedence of what is lawful and what isn't lawful.
Well, I thank you for that. I mean, the heart of, at least as I hear what you're saying, is that we have to have a secure border in the first place.
Yes.
Yeah, well, thank you again. My time is up, and I'm going to, are you next? Holly? Senator from Missouri.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks to the witnesses for being here. I have to say, I'm kind of amazed that we're holding this hearing. To me, it's remarkable that the idea of actually, as you were just saying, Ms. Moran, the idea of enforcing our laws, protecting our border, securing our streets from criminals, it's amazing that that's controversial at all. And it says something a lot about the other side of the dais that we're having this hearing today. Let me just ask you, Mr. Reifland-Melnick, I mean, is it really such a bad idea to deport people like the criminal who killed this young man? This is Travis Wolf. He was 12 years old when he was killed. He was mowed down, and I do mean mowed down, in a car by an illegal immigrant, 12 years of age, walking along a sidewalk in my state of Missouri, mowed down by an illegal immigrant who I think also had a prior criminal record. Is this such a bad idea to deport the person who killed him?
Any person who commits a heinous crime should suffer the consequences under the law.
Good. What about Officer David Lee? Officer David Lee was killed in Missouri just a few months ago by another illegal immigrant, once again in a car, who used it as a lethal weapon to ram him and kill him. Is it so wrong, such a bad idea to deport the illegal immigrant who killed this good man?
Again, any person who commits an awful act should face the full force of the law. And
We've
I've
had
never said
multiple
otherwise.
stabbings in the state of Missouri at laundromats in O'Fallon, Missouri, where innocent civilians were going to do their laundry of an evening and were attacked with knives, slashed, bled, stomped upon. Should the illegals who did that, should they not be deported?
As I said,
In assault over one saw this legal immigrant deported.
they should face the consequences. Are a very small the population that President Trump is promising to deport.
Well, let's talk
13
about the
million
rest
people.
of the people who you don't want to be deported. You said in an article that you wrote recently, new report shows devastating costs of mass deportation. You wrote this in October. Do you remember this piece?
Yes, that is a summary of our report. That
Yeah,
we
so
published
in this
October.
piece, and it's also in your written testimony, you talk about how much the economy will lose if the United States actually enforces our immigration laws and deports folks who are here illegally. And I want to quote you now. You say some industries would be particularly hard hit, including construction, agriculture, and hospitality, which can 500,000 million workers. What's the argument here, that there aren't American workers? Jobs?
No, and as I said previously, are, but the issue is
Wages to
decades.
rise?
I think that we want to pass a path to citizenship so we can have a level and fair playing field for every American.
Why would you want American citizens and those who are here lawfully to have to compete against illegal immigrants who, by the way, are often
I
paid
don't
not
want that.
minimum wage, who are not given the federally mandated benefits precisely because they're here illegally? Why would you want to drive down the wages of millions of working Americans who can't get those jobs in construction, agriculture, and hospitality because illegal immigrants are getting them? Suppressing suppressing wages in the meantime. Why would you want to do that?
Well, if you didn't hear from my initial testimony, you know I don't want
Oh,
that.
listen,
want
I read your
exploitation
testimony word for
to
word, and
avoid-
I've been watching it, and I know what the answer is. You don't actually care about working people because you're absolutely hell-bent on this ideological agenda of opening our border. You want to give everybody who's here a path to citizenship. You want blanket amnesty. You talk about mass deportations. That's your word, not Trump's. You want mass amnesty, right? It's right here in your testimony.
We want a path to citizenship for
That's
people
amnesty.
who pass a background check, who pay a
That's
fine.
amnesty, who you
and
just
that
said
way
there's
we'll get
millions
a
of people,
level
13
playing
million people. Right, 13 million people you want to dump into the labor force.
They are
Who
already
will
in
drive
the labor force,
illegally?
Senator.
They're here,
Yes.
taking jobs
So
from
let's
American
make it
citizens. And so,
legal and avoid
perfect. So
this.
here's your plan. So just if you're wondering, America, here's the Democrats' plan: take the 13 million plus illegals who are here, taking jobs from Americans, taking wages down, taking health care benefits, and bring them here legally so that they can continue to drive down wages, flood the labor force, and suppress all
Senator
of the
Hawley, they
above.
can't flood the labor force if they're already part of the labor force, which is
They
the
are
economic
flooding the
issue
labor
today.
force now. That's what's happening now. Why do
The
you think
majority
wages
have been here for
flatlined?
over 15 years. Many millions have been
And
here
what has
since
happened
the
to
Reagan
working class
administration.
wages in that time, Mr. Reichlin-Melnick?
Working
Have
class
they gone
wages
up?
are currently going up. Yes.
Oh, really? They've
have
gone up over the last
year.
15 years?
Over the
They're
last
up?
15 years, I will have to consult the economists on that matter.
Yeah, they're down, way down. What world do you live in? Listen,
Senator Hawley, they
here's
are-
the deal. The
Are you
American
familiar
people
with the
just
phrase,
voted.
"Don't
The American
cut off
people
your nose to
just
spite your
voted.
face"?
You know what? It's my time, not yours. So you're here to answer my questions, not to offer a soliloquy. And let me just end with this. The had a good look at your economic, and they voted against it. An open border for the last facto amnesty yourself 15 plus has been a people have died lower because of it. Our streets are in chaos because of it. And now you and the Democrat Party just say more of the same, let's double down. I would just say to you, I think that's insanity. I think it's total insanity, and the American people do too.
Senator Hawley, we have a choice. We can either hurt the economy or help the economy. And if we want to deport 13 million
It hurts the economy to give American workers jobs.
Senator from Texas.
Elections have consequences. For the last 4 years, we have seen the most radical experiment in open borders this nation has ever seen. There are many reasons the American people showed up in overwhelming numbers to vote to re-elect Donald Trump, to elect a Republican majority in the Senate, to re-elect a Republican majority in the House, but there was no reason more front and center than the open borders of the last 4 years. And I have to say, I think there were a number of us wondering, did any of the Democrats in Congress learn anything from the election? And the existence of this hearing makes very clear the answer is no. We've seen 12 million people come into this country illegally under Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. Texas has seen Democrat for over read this election. When your home is invaded by 1 million people, it changes your voting patterns. Every single day, we have seen Americans murdered. We have seen women raped.
Howard County homeowners can now save thousands on a closet makeover through the Closet America Makeover program.
By Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. The numbers are staggering. According to ICE, as of July 21st, 2024, nearly 650,000 criminal illegal aliens were currently on ICE's been released. Wondering of those 6,000, 4 have been convicted of homicide. You want to know what mass deport? Those 14,000 better pack their bags right now. Because with a new administration, we're going to arrest you and we are going to deport you. 20,061 have been convicted of sexual assault. Now, I want you to ask of my Democrat colleagues, and it is striking that virtually none of them are here, that is reflected in their conduct because they are silent and putting their head in the sand as to the human tragedies. But what resident of what blue state says, you know what, America's better off with 20,000 rapists being released into this country? 105,146 have been convicted of assault. I would ask my Democrat colleagues if they were here, why the hell today does the Biden administration not go and arrest every one of these criminals and deport them? What rational world says America's better off with more criminals? And these are not just statistics. Ms. Moran, thank you for being here. The country grieves the loss of your daughter. Your daughter was beautiful. She was a mom who I know loved her kids. And she's not with us today. She was raped and murdered because this administration chose to release a violent criminal into America. Your daughter should still be alive. And every one of these victims should still be alive. Laken Riley, a name that the Democrats on this committee can't bring themselves to utter, should still be alive. And in my hometown of Houston, Jocelyn Nungry, I've gotten to know Jocelyn's mother, Alexis, very well. Miss Moran, like you, Alexis is incredibly brave. I cannot imagine the pain. I'm a father. To lose your child, no parent should have to bury their child. Children should bury their parents, not the other way around. It is wrong what happened to you. But I want to say to you, thank you for having the courage to tell Rachel's story. I would understand if you just curled up in a ball and cried. But, and I'm sure you have wept a lot of tears. But thank you for having the courage to tell Rachel's story. And I want to say, if there is anything that is a mandate from this election, it is to end this insanity, stop these murders, stop these rapes, stop these assaults, protect our citizens. And Ms. Moran, I just want to give you the opportunity at the end of my questioning to share from your perspective why this matters, why we should stop releasing criminals into America.
In order to prepare for this hearing, I was actually looking at statistics over the last couple of days. And most of the rape and murder statistics by illegal immigrants are actually against children.
Yeah.
And to me, that's astounding. I don't know how many people here have children or grandchildren, but can you imagine your 7, 8, 9-year-old daughter being forcibly raped by a stranger, sometimes multiple times? This is the culture, and I realize it's not all immigrants, but this is the culture that they come from, this kind of violence. They grow up in it in their countries. To them, it's just part of what they've known for their lives. But to bring that criminal culture into America, it's destroying our families. I know of women in my hometown that have come up to me because they know I'm Rachel's mom and say to me, some guy just ran up behind me and tried to pull me down to the ground. And if it wasn't for the fact that I could fight him off and run to a store to call the police, I might not be here. And in one incident, that man had attacked 7 other women.
Wow.
Why are we allowing this? And then the women and children that are raped, and because they're so ashamed of what's happened to them, how they've been so violated, they don't say anything. So the numbers are grossly underestimated, I believe, as far as the crimes that are happening in our country.
Thank
And
you.
I think we need to stop this.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I appreciate all the witnesses appearing before the committee today. There are obviously many questions asked about the mass deportation proposal of the president-elect. As I said earlier, I listened carefully at the Meet the Press yesterday, and I believe the magnitude of that statement is growing in the mind of the president-elect. Mr. Melnick, you certainly allude to that in terms of the number of personnel and the cost to our nation. Bottom line, we have no tolerance for keeping dangerous who've come to this country and asked to be made citizens. And we certainly have no interest in a policy that allows them to come across the border with impunity. But the mass deportation includes not only the possibility of stopping those people, but an impact on Mr. Touré and his family. I think most of us would agree that a man who's given his life to criminal prosecution is of value to us based on what Ms. Moran just mentioned. And I think we should go forward with that in mind. Let's be thoughtful and reflective and do things that make America safer and are consistent with our values. The hearing record will remain open for 1 week for additional materials to be submitted. And with that, the meeting of this committee stands adjourned. Would damage our economy and separate American families. Instead, we should focus on deporting those who are truly a danger to America, and we should give the rest a chance to earn legal status. They would have to register with the government, certainly pay their taxes, and submit to serious background checks. Most Americans, nearly 2 out of 3, agree we should give lawful status to undocumented immigrants who don't pose a threat to our country. That's what we did in 2013. A bipartisan group of 8 senators, including myself and Ranking Member Graham, drafted a bill to reform our immigration laws and secure our border. 2013 it was. That bill passed the Senate 68-32. Unfortunately, it wasn't taken up by the House of Representatives and the Republican majority. The notion behind that was that everyone would be under requirement to come forward and identify themselves to the government. All the undocumented people in this country. And if they identified themselves, went through a background check, paid their taxes, they could continue to live and work here without fear of deportation. In fact, in our bill, over a long period of time, and a really long period of time, they could be on a path to legality and citizenship. That's a starting point that I think makes sense. Not mass deportation, but mass accountability, so we know who's here. And how would it make a difference? We would go to E-Verify to make sure that if you didn't go through that process in our bill, you couldn't legally work in the United States. So there was an enforcement. It was serious. I'm glad I was part of that effort, and I hope we can return to the discussion. Over the weekend, President-elect Trump, I watched his interview on Meet the Press. He said some positive things from my point of view. And he really challenged us on the Democratic side to work with him when it came to the Dreamers. I accept the challenge. Name the time and place, Mr. President. I'll be there. The reality is that Congress, for almost 40 years, has failed to fix our broken immigration system. We've had opportunities to do it. I hope we can find more in the future. We should use our 2013 immigration bill as a starting point instead of mass deportations. As I said, mass accountability. Let's fix our broken immigration system in a way that protects our country and honors our heritage as a nation of immigrants. Now I recognize Senator Graham.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. From our point of view over here, one of the primary issues facing the American people in 2024 for president and other elections, who is best able to control a broken border? Most Americans are sympathetic, kind-hearted people who feel like the Biden administration was criminally negligent in protecting us by having a broken border and allowing drugs to pour into our country to kill tens of thousands of young people, allow people to come in our country who are convicted felons to do damage to families we'll hear from today. That nightmare is coming to a close. In January of 2025, the Republican Senate will make its top priority a transformational border security bill that will be taken up and passed by Budget Committee, increasing the number of bed spaces available to detain people instead of releasing them, increasing the number of ICE agents to deal with people who should be deported, finish the wall, and put technology on the border so we'll have operational control of the border. That's going to be our top priority. I want to cut taxes, we will cut taxes. But as to the Senate, transformational border security goes first through reconciliation. Over 8 million people were encountered during the Biden years, 4 million released into the country. The non-detained docket that we have as a nation is over 7 million people. There are 600 and something thousand people on that non-detained document that have criminal.
Parents, is your child in 5th grade and learning to write about literature, but their essays sound like this? Charlotte's Web.
That present a threat to us and should never have been here to begin with. The politics of immigration and broken borders, according to a couple of Democratic senators, was outcome determinative. I think they're right. So as much as I respect and admire the chairman, I think your focus is misplaced here. You should be working with us to clean up this mess. You should want mass deportations of people here illegally that represent threats to our country. How did we get to where we're at? The average annual deportation for Obama and Trump was about the same. Along comes Biden, it drops like a rock. So when you have people show up, and by the millions, and the number of people being deported goes down by 40-something%, you're incentivizing more people to come. It is our belief that the only way you'll get control of the border is for deportations to start early so people will not pay the money to the coyotes and others to come to our border in the first place because they see people leaving, not staying. If we do not have outflow, the inflow will continue. An example of a broken immigration system was the abuse of parole by the Biden administration. Mass parole of people who did not meet the 2 criteria under the parole statute. The man who's been convicted of killing Laken Riley was paroled into the country because there was no bed space. There's nothing in the statute that allows parole because we have no place to put you. There are 38,000 beds. We're going to increase that dramatically. One of the witnesses here today, his family was destroyed by a man who had been deported 3 times. The 4th time was not a charm. So if you're here illegally, get ready to leave. If you're a criminal, we're coming after you first. If you've been paroled illegally, we're not going to give you the roots to attach yourself to our country because you should not have been here in the first place. As to the dreamers, hopefully we can find a solution to that problem. What I want to do is regain control of a broken border really quickly. The highest number of people on the terrorist watch list in our country exists today. I hope that number will go down pretty quickly. I know Senator Cornyn's on the Intel Committee. Created a ticking time bomb for our national security. So yes, the Republican Party will pass as its top priority border security, more bed spaces so you don't have to release people that shouldn't be released, and more ICE agents to deport people who represent a threat to our country and shouldn't be here to begin with. We're going to do that. And to my Democratic friends, I think if you resist rational deportation policy, you do so at your own peril. 86% of the people deported under the Trump first term were involved with criminal convictions or pending criminal matters. I have never seen such a mess. It's time to clean that mess up. So come January, help is on the way.
Thank you, Senator Graham. We have an immigration subcommittee, and chairing that committee is Senator Padilla and ranking member Senator Cornyn. They each asked for a chance to make an opening statement. I recognize Senator Padilla.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Senator Graham. I want to thank each and every one of the witnesses that are here today for obviously a timely and important discussion, but taking place during an uncertain and unnerving time for many in our nation's history. I'm going to deviate for a second from my prepared remarks just to acknowledge what Senator Graham has begun to lay out. Look, this topic, this issue is certainly complex. It doesn't do the issue and the challenge justice to just say, well, there's so many immigrants in America, or some people say illegal, some people say undocumented immigrants in America, when you really must break it down into a number of categories. Are there some number that beyond being in the country undocumented may be involved with unlawful activities? Yes, and I don't think you're going to find Democrats saying we shouldn't be pursuing actions against violent criminals. But when Senator Graham also suggests, but I hope we can take care of the dreamers. Dreamers, as you all know, young people who were brought here by their parents at a very young age, but have grown up here and are undocumented. Are they also on the target list for deportation, or not, because we look at them in a different category? I've had Republican colleagues want to cooperate and collaborate on legal status and pathways to citizenship for farm workers, for example. And I get back to them and other essential workers in America, but just because you're undocumented, does that mean you are on the target list? Yes or no? Or are we going to have the maturity and act responsibly to kind of break down a complex conversation? Because, number one, yes, Democrats believe we need an orderly, safe, and humane border. Number two, yes, we should not hesitate to pursue enforcement actions against violent criminals. But let's be clear what we're talking about today. This hearing is on the eve of the next Donald Trump administration. And we've heard him for months and months and months now throughout the campaign trail promise mass deportations. We heard him over and over again commit to, quote, the largest deportation operation in American history. And we've had big ones. For folks watching at home, Google Operation Wetback and begin to do some homework. We've even heard Donald Trump say that there will be no price tag for deportations, and heard him promise on Truth Social to use the United States military to execute it. Now, I can already hear some of the rebuttals from Republican colleagues to suggest that, well, he doesn't really mean all immigrants. He's only talking about violent criminals. Well, I wish I could believe that he's only committing to targeting violent criminals, because we agree on that front. But pardon me if I'm skeptical, we've seen Donald Trump in the past and how he operates. Do you remember the Muslim bans he imposed early in his first term? And the family separations at the border that we witnessed for years? So I've seen enough to know that while he may plan to prioritize, in effect, he will be targeting all undocumented immigrants, which will inevitably include those without criminal convictions of any type. Now, previous administrations of both parties, we saw some stats being presented. It's been the policy of previous administrations to prioritize the deportation of those with criminal convictions. But what we're hearing from incoming President Trump isn't that. And look at who he is putting in these pivotal roles to help him execute. A loyalist in Kristi Noem at DHS, extremist Stephen Miller as Deputy Chief of Staff for Policy, and Tom Homan as border czar, who told undocumented immigrants through the press, quote, "You should be afraid," end quote. dreamers, farm workers. That's the message. And he promised worksite raids to prosecute anyone who stands in their way. They're pushing an extremist agenda. On top of the fact that, like, separating spouses and ripping away children from their parents, citizen children from sometimes undocumented immigrant parents, isn't just cruel. It's not just morally wrong. Here's another very important reason why Americans should be concerned. For anybody whose vote this last November was motivated by high prices of food, of housing, of anything else, understand that the mass deportation Donald Trump is describing will be disastrous to our economy. Again, I'm not trying to justify those involved with criminal activity. We're on all the same page there. I'm talking about nonviolent criminal, undocumented immigrants. It is all of us, the American people, who will pay for the extremism policies that he has promised. Put aside the millions and millions and millions of dollars to find undocumented immigrants he may be targeting, to detain and to remove through the process of deportation. For a minute, don't even count on the funds that will be necessary to hire thousands of Border Patrol and ICE agents, let alone the cost of constructing detention centers and jails for this operation. Let's focus on the impacts to the economy for American families. Because the fact is, there are millions of undocumented immigrants living in the United States today who are working in industries critical to our entire economy. Undocumented immigrants make up nearly 15% of all construction workers, for example, and roughly half of our agricultural workforce. Again, if you care about the cost of housing, you care about food prices at the grocery store, you should be paying attention. Because if tomorrow Stephen Miller could snap his fingers and have his way, our annual GDP would drop roughly 6.8%. Imagine all the losses of the Great Recession and then still shrinking the economy another 2.5 points. So what does that mean for folks at home? It's simple. Any industry with a significant percentage of undocumented immigrants will have a harder time finding workers. And I know we've all been hearing from employers and business leaders for years now about their struggle already to find sufficient workforce.
Hit Columbia and surrounding areas, where New Living Wellness Chiropractic. Get relief from back pain, neck pain, pinched nerves, tingling, sciatica, and more. We're booking new patient appointments this month for $37. Tap below to get yours now.
Christmas dinner. And if you've been saving up for years and years to try to buy your first home, get ready to wait even longer, because construction will slow and prices will go up. So the next time we hear Republicans say that they support Trump's plan to deport waves of undocumented immigrants, let's be clear about what comes with that. Higher prices for American families. They're supporting the forced removal of millions of hardworking community members, 80% of whom have lived here 10 years or more. These are not recent arrivals. People who have lived here for years, if not decades. They're supporting fear and uncertainty in immigrant communities that will cause untold numbers of immigrants, no matter their status, to stay home from work, from school, from shopping. And they're supporting the punishment of over 5 million workers who Donald Trump's own administration declared to be, quote, essential to our economy. Essential workers who fed us and kept us safe during the COVID-19 pandemic. So if you agree with the spirit of at least that segment deserves better, then colleagues join me in supporting the Citizenship for Essential Workers Act, the essential workers that the Trump administration deemed critical to our nation's economy and security. Let's provide them with some legal status up front and a pathway to earn citizenship because we need them. Our economy needs farm workers. I think you'd agree. Our economy needs construction workers, hospitality and transportation workers, healthcare workers, and students and innovators who help keep our economy and our country thriving. We don't need the massive deportations that the political rhetoric of the campaign cycle has brought us. And we certainly don't need the uncertainty, the fear, and the loss that we'll feel for years to come. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I'm looking forward to hearing from our witnesses and to today's conversation.
Thanks, Senator Padilla. Senator Cornyn?
Thank you, Chairman Durbin. Listening to my Democratic colleagues, it's as if November 5th never occurred, that we haven't had an election, that we haven't had a referendum on the failed border policies of the Biden-Harris administration. Let's be clear, the crisis at the southern border is entirely a problem caused by the Biden administration's policies. It is a man-made disaster. The election, I believe, in large part was a referendum on those policies, and the American people spoke decisively, rejecting this as the new normal. They rejected lawlessness as the new normal. When President Biden came into office, Customs and Border Protection was apprehending about 70,000 illegal migrants a month. President Biden came in and reversed virtually all of the Trump administration policies, including canceling our agreements with Mexico and the Northern Triangle countries to limit illegal immigration. President Biden also attempted to impose a 100-day moratorium on all deportations. By March, illegal crossings had ballooned to 170,000 per month, up from 70,000, and then climbed progressively higher from there. Then the president used his executive authority to implement new guidelines that made clear to illegal immigrants that DHS was extremely unlikely to take any action against them until their conduct became especially egregious. Even so, criminal aliens were able to get away with a lot before any action would be taken. Take, for example, the tragic case of Rachel Morin, a mother of 5 who was raped and murdered by an illegal migrant. Her killer crossed the border illegally in February of 2023. He was suspected of committing multiple crimes even before he took her life. This tragedy and others like it could have been prevented were it not for President Biden's willful refusal to enforce the law. The truth of the matter is, President Biden's willful neglect of border security and public safety has created immense suffering for American families. And his administration is fully responsible for the fact that we have to hold this hearing today. The American people are fed up with the lawlessness at the southern border, and in November they tasked Republicans the job of cleaning it up, and that we will do. We have a big job ahead of us, no doubt, but by one estimate, there are already 1.3 to 1.6 migrants who are under final orders of deportation who are still in the country. That strikes me as a good place to start. People who have been entitled to full due process and hearing in front of an immigration court and are under final orders of deportation. What are they still doing here? Well, it's because of the Biden administration's willful neglect of the law and